Hello everybody and a very warm welcome back to the latest episode of Hidden Jewels of Soul and Disco. I'm still fighting my flu, so my voice is giving up from time to time, so please bear with me. This week we were featuring William Stuckey. Why William Stuckey's 1979 release Love of Mine is a ridiculously rare soul LP, and why the reissue almost didn't happen even if the master tapes were physically available, well, we'll discuss this later on.
We had a love that few have no more, and it is shame we lost it. She took
Stuckey was born blind, and he grew up with his grandparents, Champion Stuckey and Mildred Stuckey. He also visited the Arkansas School for the Blind, where his musical talent was soon discovered and very much pushed forward. He brought many trophies for the school and some nationwide recognition. He could play many instruments, he could write songs, he was an engineer, so he was very, very talented on that field. In 1967, he graduated from school and soon began his professional career. In 1968, he released his first single on the True Soul label, which was founded by Lee Anthony. The A-side was Taking Care of Business and the B-side was Nowhere. In 1977, he released another single on the ICA label, which was called You Can Count on Me, and also Disco Fly. You Can Count on Me was covered by Benny King and also by Bobby Bland on their albums later on. In 1979, he finally released his first album, which is called Love of Mine. And here it is in all of its glory. And I'm showing you this record and I'm very proud of it, because also with this record I never thought that I'm having an original copy ever in my hands or even in my collection, because this is such a truly great album, and also the backstory of William Stuckey is very touching. So this combination of the backstory of the album, the content, the great content of the album makes this a very, very valuable record for me. Not the fact that it's rare, but the fact of the person and the content. So why is this record so ridiculously rare? It was only released locally on the Simplex label, which was also founded by Lee Anthony. And so you only had the chance to get it locally. If you were in Arkansas in a couple of years ago, you might have had the chance to find 2 copies or 1 copy in the local record store. These times are gone. I've seen this record being sold between $600 to $1,000. I was very fortunate getting this record for a way cheaper price when the LP and vinyl prices were still in a range where you considered that normal. But anyway, how to get that album if you want to have it on vinyl. And that brings us to the second question I asked at the beginning, and that's why the reissue almost didn't happen. So the reissue by Anthems of the North was done in 2021, and what they did was that they got in touch with William Stuckey and asked him if he would like them to re-release the album. There's a demand for it, if he still has the tapes, if he's okay with it. He said no. So Brian Sears, who does research for Anthems of the North, got in touch with the Sun. They talked, they built a relationship, and at one point the multitrack tapes were exchanged on a supermarket parking lot. So far, so good. So the tapes were brought to one of the best archival engineers in the United States. And this is Dan Johnson. And Dan Johnson really had to save the tapes because they were in a very, very bad state. You have to imagine the tapes were in the basement, there were heat, they were cold, there were water, so they were pretty much damaged. But he made it possible to save the tapes. Also, something I want to point out about this reissue, which you can get cheaply between 20 to 30 bucks, is next to the fact that their multitracks were used, also the album was mastered how William Stuckey intended the album to be mastered. So when he recorded that album back in the day in 1979, he left notes where he described how he wanted each song to sound. So Simplex wasn't a huge label where they had a lot of time, studio time was expensive, to get it done the way he wanted. It was too much money. So they rushed the release out, and William Stuckey was very, very disappointed with the release of the album. So you can imagine the first time once the tapes were saved and the mastering notes, which is very rarely happening that you have the mastering notes from back in the day on releases like this. When he heard that the first time over the phone, he was crying. And I show you a picture now where he's holding his record, and I want you to look at the surroundings. I want you to have a closer look at the surroundings of this picture. I can only support labels like Anthems of the North who take the extra mile to try to get to the multitracks tapes, try to get them saved, and also to make sure that the artist is getting the money they deserve for their work. So if you like the album, if you don't want to go for an original, even if you find it, go and get this reissue. There was also this great hype sticker where it also says ridiculously rare Arkansas album. Plus, what you also get is an instrumental track which is not on the original, which was found on the master tapes, and it was called Just Around the Corner. And I asked Brian Sears why they made the covers so different, black and white, and he said, for us it's very important to make sure what's a reissue and what's not. And I love that, because on many reissue labels they copy it 100%, and it's getting sometimes difficult to figure out which is the real deal. So that was also a very good move. All right, what happened after 1979? Not much. He released a single in 1980, which was called Razor Bakers, also on the Simplex album. And in 1986, William Stuckey actually released a soundtrack to a Fred Williams movie, which was called The Messenger. I didn't find any information about it, so I doubted it, but I found the movie and I checked the credit, and there it's clearly been said that he composed the music to that movie. I would love to have the soundtrack of that movie, because it's not bad. The movie, that's another story, but we're not a movie channel. Also, in 1989, he released a single which was called Girl, I Got You on the Run. Also, what I found on my first ever record fair was, and I think was the first ever single I bought on a record fair, was on the Tracks label, Every Day Will Be Like a Holiday by Thomas East, where William also worked very closely with, and William Stuckey in a beautiful red vinyl. And that's an absolutely adorable single. Both sides are great, but Every Day Will Be Like a Holiday, which is a classic. Really, if you get along, this was a $5 single. If you get along it, go and get it to have an impression of the great work of William Stuckey. Once the reissue was out, William Stuckey passed away in 2021. And the family is very proud of him, and the family is so happy that he could live and experience the reissue of the album and the success it had worldwide. So I'm happy about that, and I'm happy that he got the recognition and he gets the money for his work. So If you have the chance, go and check that album out. You easily find it on YouTube. I haven't checked it on Spotify, but I'm pretty sure it might be on Spotify. You can get it. You can get it on the website from Athens of the North. So yeah, if you have the chance, check it out. Once again, a big thank you. Thanks for watching. Listen to good music. Maybe William Stuckey, and I'll see you next time. Bye.